Hey guys, Nick here. So today we got quite the comparison video. Here on the right we have a brand new 2026 Honda Rancher 4x4 foot shift we're going to be taking a look at, which these have just been released from Honda. This just came in this week, so it doesn't get any more new than that. And I know you all love to see the Rancher and to talk about it. So a better way than to introduce and talk about the Rancher, since there isn't a whole bunch of changes for 2026, than to compare it with its predecessor, the iconic Honda Fourtrax. Now this Fourtrax right here is a 1991 model, which gives it a nice ripe age of 35 years old to date. Now in today's video, this is going to give us a very unique perspective to talk about what were the options back in 1991 on the Fourtrax, what was the pricing of a new ATV, what were its specs in terms of power and towing capacity, and then comparing that to the new modernized Rancher nowadays and talking about how things have changed but as well stayed very similar in Honda's roots. And of course we'll take these units for a spin here today. So take a seat, relax, and let's get started. Now before we get any further in the video, I want to make sure that I thank JAF Motors of Glenville, New York for lending me this brand new 2026 Honda Rancher to show you all around it and talk about it. Now the Fourtrax on the left is actually part of my personal collection that I've had here for about 5 years now that I've owned it. But let's get back into the video. Alrighty, so starting off with the Fourtrax, we're going to go through all the numbers on this machine like we would on the Rancher and any new ATV. Now starting off with powertrain, this was a 282cc air-cooled 5-speed carbureted drivetrain with a backup kickstart. Now this motor was actually out of a dirt bike before it was put in the Fourtrax. I forget over what model particular it was out of, but this originally was a dirt bike motor that they threw and put in the Fourtrax from the three-wheeler days. And so these were offered in a two-wheel or four-wheel drive configuration. Now any and all four-wheel drive models were always an all-time four-wheel drive setup, which is this one right here. Now you could buy an aftermarket kit at the time, which would allow you to engage and disengage four-wheel drive to a two-wheel drive setup, but that didn't come standard on the unit like you do with a new machine. Now this weighed a little shy under 490 pounds dry. This has a 3.3 gallon fuel tank with a half-gallon fuel reserve with a fuel on and off from the bottom of the tank. You of course do have a fuel shut off on this. You don't get that on a new Rancher. Now in terms of towing ratings, this was rated for 66 pounds in the front rack and 130 pounds on the rear rack. And then this had a towing capacity of 850 pounds from the hitch. Now most people probably never listen to that and never will, but I'm sure as many of you down in the comments have had and used Fourtraxes, you know that they are quite capable machines and will basically handle anything you throw at them. Now something also to keep in mind, the back axle is always locked on the Fourtrax, and then the front is actually an open differential, which would kind of swap back and forth between the front wheels and had a bit of a limited slip to it, but wasn't like a front locking differential. Now in terms of colors, you get it almost always an iconic Honda red, and then they would offer either an olive green possibly, which they did for this model year. Some years they offered a tan, some years they offered a navy blue, and so the colors did change. Now in terms of pricing, which is interesting, I was able to find and look up in 1994 they had a MSRP of $5,099, but this is 3 years prior. And in 1999, which was the last year of the Fourtrax, it was a sticker of $51.99. So the pricing really didn't change over that decade. So on a 91, I couldn't find it for sure, but I'm gonna guess it was probably right at about 5,000 flat or 5,049 out the door. Now keep in mind at the time of release, no dealers had destination charges. Honda didn't charge that to the dealers either. So that destination charge you have to pay now is new with shipping, and that didn't exist 30 years ago. As well, there wasn't really extra fees, setup fees from dealerships, prep fees, gas fees, anything like that. Didn't exist at the time either of purchase when these were out. Business was done, of course, very differently, and marketing and business has just changed in general a lot. So that's really all the stats on the Fourtrax. It's time we move over and talk about the Rancher. Alrighty, so now let's talk some figures and numbers on the 2026 Honda Rancher foot shift. Now in terms of drivetrain, this is a 420cc fuel-injected, liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine, but this does still share a 5-speed transmission, semi-automatic drive like the Fourtrax, so no clutch, you just shift up and go. It's 5 gears straight up, and they both had a reverse, but you got selectable 2-wheel and 4-wheel drive. 2-wheel drive is always locked in the back. 4-wheel drive engages the front diff, which is very limited slip and will lock for 2026. Now in terms of colors, Honda offers a Hero Red, which is this right here of course, and a Deep Forest Green. They as well offer a camo finish, which is 500 extra, but you can get that on the Rancher. Now this has a curb weight of 580 pounds, which is a bit more than what the Fourtrax is of course, but it is a much larger statue, bigger machine. This has a 3.9 gallon fuel tank, which includes a 1.3 gallon reserve on it. Now on this, there isn't a fuel shut-off switch where you can turn the fuel off or put it on reserve on the tank or just on regular on. It is all through the dashboard that will basically tell you your low fuel, and that will be your reserve tank on it. In terms of your rack capacities, you have 66 pounds up front and 133 in the back, which is basically identical to what the Fourtrax is rated. And your towing is right about 850 pounds, which again, basically the same as the Fourtrax, but you can do far more than what they're really rated, honestly. If you've had these machines, you really know what they're capable of, especially with it being a gear-driven transmission and there's no belt. It's really hard for things to slip. They really like to lock up and work. Now, in terms of pricing though, this is where we're gonna get a little more expensive. For 2026, we have a base MSRP of $7,349, which doesn't include a destination charge, which is also then added on from Honda directly, which gives you an out-the-door price of $7,969, and that would be your current out-the-door price versus that $5,099 in 1994 for a Fourtrax. So pricing, of course, has gone up over time. There's more fees to it. Depending upon the dealer, they might have markups, or they might have some markdowns and have some deals for you going on. If you tell JAF Motors you just saw BrickNick, and you want to buy a machine from them, they'll of course give you a deal and hook you up. So those are kind of the main figures on the two machines. It's time we get up close though and take a loop around on the Fourtrax and talk about its compartments and go through it. Alrighty, now walking up to the Fourtrax, it's a lot more simple, but there's a couple things that are a little bit unique that make a Fourtrax a Fourtrax. Let's start off with cold starting this machine. If your battery was dead and you had to kick start this, which is quite special, you would pull this cover off. You're gonna see our lever here. That's gonna be a kickstart, right? But it has so much compression, you gotta take this lever and you'll flip it all the way straight up, and then you can give it a kick. And the second you kick it down, it'll basically fire right up. It's a Fourtrax, but that will every time flip back down. So if you have to kick it again, you gotta push it up. Your little internal oil filter's right there. Your dipstick and your fills right there. You have a drain underneath the motor. See actually the label of the sizing of the motor right there. So it's kind of a unique motor, and the way you look at it, you can really kind of notice and realize it looks pretty similar to like a dirt bike motor. So yeah, that's kind of a cool little thing that folds away. Alrighty, so now under our seat is our air box right there. You have two 10mm bolts you have to take off right there, which will allow you access to your battery. So that isn't readily and openly accessible like on a Rancher. Now if you remove these rubber tabs though, flip this over, undo our little hook in the back. We have a little toolkit area. And this one has an optional meter from Honda for its hours. So this one has 1,806 hours on it. Now as we move on, you got two halogen bulbs in the front here. Of course, we have an aftermarket winch, which I don't know how old that winch is in there, but it still works. See our diff there for our four-wheel drive. And the little shocks, I believe they went to a bigger shock. I think this is with the bigger shocks. I believe the earlier years, they had a smaller front shock on them. Someone can correct that on me, of course. On this side right here, of course, our 5 gears up actually tells us right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So your first gear is your low, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Neutral, and then down's your reverse. Your motor oil, but then you have a midpoint here for kind of like, I guess you could treat it as like a transfer case in a way from going 2-wheel drive to 4-wheel drive. So that will take motor oil, I believe, and not diff fluid like you would in the back here and in the front. So they actually designed these a little bit differently. Of course, the drum brake adjustable. Honda at the time, they didn't have 12-volt outlets, but they had a unique system here. You would pull these plugs off and it's an outlet, and it basically would have a bunch of plugs and you could run different accessories off of. You would kind of treat it like a 12-volt outlet. Of course, they're off and are on. You have an off and an on for your headlights, a high and a low beam, your emergency kill, your choke, on and off, the winch that I got on this one. Of course, our throttle. These will always start in like half a click, even when they're stone cold. This one's been up and running. So these will basically always start for you. Hondas are notorious for always running and not really shutting down, especially Fourtraxes. You reverse here, you pull back and you shift down, goes into reverse. You do have a reverse indicator, which is that red light right there. Shift up, you're neutral, and it doesn't tell you anything else of what gear you're in. The hour meter in the back I showed you is an option. That wasn't something that came standard on these either. I think it's time we move on to the Rancher. Alrighty, now we're gonna kind of breeze through the Rancher because I've done so many Ranchers over the years. Honda really hasn't changed these in the last, 5+ years. Since 2014, they haven't done much other than racks and color. 2026, they did change. All the warning labels are black now. When you look around this machine, they were all black. They used to have a white background. That's literally it. And supposedly the front diff is now like a locking front differential. But I'm not too sure on that yet from what I've been reading. So we'll see. But anyways, getting into it, fuel fill is up front instead of a central tank fill up here. The tank is still there, but your fuel fills to the side. So the tank is actually a little bit lower. Your coolant fill and your reservoir is under this cover here. Push that in. And then our check is right here under our fender, our low and our upper. Nice and simple. Storage compartment. Good little storage thing. It has a gasket. It's all watertight sealed. The racks have changed. There's no more bar in the front. So if you put something on your racks, they slide right off, which I don't like. And the same goes for the back. It is flat. So that's something to keep in mind. But that's because they added Honda's cargo accessibility things. So you can add like containers from OEM Honda that basically snap in. So that's why they do that. Low tire pressure is right there. Your weights on your racks is over there. Weight on your front rack is right here. Your dipstick, your oil fill, oil check right there. 2-wheel, 4-wheel is selectable right there. 2-wheel and then your 4-wheel drive. So you can have standard 2-wheel drive and then engage 4-wheel drive, be limited slip with that front locking differential. That's auto locking. So that's in terms around it. Let me pull this apart. Now looking from the back of the machine, what you notice, we can actually see the battery. It is just clamped in this cover and it pulls out, slides right out. So rear storage like on the Fourtrax. Then you have your battery, your fuses, your toolkit right here. Your air box is right here. This full center shroud actually removes in about 30 seconds. It's just pushed in and there's no backup kickstart or pull start on this. You can buy a aftermarket or actually an accessory pull start on the Hondas, but you're never gonna want one or need one on these, especially on the new fuel injected units. And then in your booklet here with your manual, low tire pressure gauge is included. That's everything really in your back trunk. We are kind of moving through here, but it's the same as all these Ranchers have been the last 10 years. Let's get into the dashboard. Now, of course, these two units are very different, the Rancher here and the Fourtrax as well, over there hiding. But there are, of course, some differences. You actually get a gauge cluster on the new Ranchers. However, it's still, I wouldn't say up to par with what's out there else on the market in terms of a display. What I'm trying to say is we could use some updates from Honda, an LED taillight, LED headlights, it's still halogen bulbs. So there's little things like that we could get a little upgrade from Honda. We have a digital fuel gauge, which is nice. You don't have that on the Fourtrax. Time, your odometer, your trip, coolant level, your hours, 100 miles and 20 hours with that wrench. Those are both countdown timers for your main first service on the machine, which that wrench will then pop up on your main part of your display. That's just basically a generic oil change on it, oil filter, and give it a once over, check the air filter, check coolant level, tire pressures. So your break-in period isn't anything too extreme. You know, take it easy on the machine, but you're really not going to hurt these too much. That's your break-in, and then it jumps up to, I believe, 600 miles from there. So that's really everything in your dashboard. That's going to look very similar. You're off and you're on for your headlights, your high and your low beam, emergency kill, your starter, your parking brake. However, you don't have to push the lever down for your reverse. You pull this, it locks, you shift down, goes into reverse, and tells you right on display, which also nice with these new ones, tells you what gear you go in. So as I move the machine back and forth, you can see through the 5 gears, it's telling me 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and first gear. So that's kind of nice. It tells you what gear you're in. Fourtrax doesn't tell you that. So that's a quick tour on the 2026 Honda Rancher. Now, it still leaves a couple things undesired, or well, desired, I should say, from what else is on the market. It's the same body from 2014, and then we had 2013 to 2007, and then from 06 was to about 06 was about to 04, I believe, and then that was from like 03 till 2000 was another body style. So we've had a few generations of Honda. The 420 motor, though, was ran from 08 to currently, but it's gone through a few renditions and generations of that motor. So it's not the same exact 420 motor from 2008, but it's still relatively similar. But that's enough on the Ranchers. I say we finally take the Fourtrax and the Rancher for a spin and close out this video. Well, that's going to do it for this video on the Honda Fourtrax and the Honda Rancher. I hope you all did enjoy. Obviously, these are very similar and very different machines in just the terms of ways Honda has changed in 35 years in producing and creating ATVs. They've gone through many generations of the Rancher, but the 420 motor is a very proven motor that's been around for a while, just as how the Fourtrax 300 motor was around for a long time before even getting put in the Fourtrax, which ended up having a lifespan of well over 10 years, over a decade of producing the Fourtrax. It had many years ahead of that as a dirt bike, trail bike motor. And so that's how Honda started to build up its reputation for these motors that are just indestructible, simplistic, easy to work on, and low maintenance motors. You can do valves on that motor, and that's really all you're gonna ever have to do for it and to it. Down the road, I've done the valves on it 5 years ago. I haven't touched them since. They probably were never touched even before I did the valves on them. They really didn't need it either that bad. Same thing with a Rancher, not much to do. These are even simpler and easier to maintain, arguably, than a Fourtrax, because you have one less place you have to change oil. On a four-wheel drive, you have that centerpiece there, you have to change oil. This, you just have your motor oil and transmission is all in one bath. You don't have two separate parts, and you just have differentials, which you'll do probably every about 1,000 miles or 800 miles, depending upon the conditions and how you ride it. And the same thing kind of goes with the Fourtrax. You do the motor oil several times before you even have to touch and do the diffs. But yeah, that's gonna kind of wrap it up for this video. I hope you all did enjoy. Really unique throwback kind of piece video. If you guys really like this and want to see more videos like this, definitely let me know more in the comments below. But of course, we want to see some updates from Honda There's some things that they could do that would be nicer. You know, visually they're not a bad looking machine, but again, it's the same body from 2014. So it's things like that that kind of eat away and hurt the value, but they also help the resale value, because if you have a machine from 2015, you can argue it's basically the same as the new one, even if there are some changes. So definitely leave your opinions down below. I know there'll be definitely some highly opinionated people in the comments below, which you're more than welcome, of course, to comment what you feel and what you think on these units. I hope you all did enjoy. Give this video a like, subscribe if you are new to help support the channel, and see more videos just like this. I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.